President Trump today announcing the United States will begin to cut or reduce aid to Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador after those three governments failed to stop the caravan of Central American migrants marching toward our border with Mexico in 2017. The United States government gave Guatemala almost $230 million in aid. Honduras received $144 million. El Salvador given $91 million. Joining us tonight to discuss the national security crisis that is posed by that caravan if it reaches the U.S. border, the involvement of cartels, narco-terrorists, and the MS-13 threat, Judicial Watch's president, Tom Fitton. Tom, good to have you with us. The president says that this could very well be a national emergency. He is, as he puts it, disappointed and displeased with the governments, the three governments that I just mentioned, plus Mexico. Your judgment about that caravan and the threat it poses?
Well, it is a national security threat. We should be concerned about the behavior of the countries. Mexico is essentially inviting this crowd in. As you reported earlier, they're not stopping them. Right. Guatemala is ill-equipped to deal with the pressure they're facing from the leftists in Honduras. So our people are in Guatemala. Chris Farrell, as you know, is down in Guatemala right now with one of our colleagues. He's reporting they're trying, but they need help. They turned away 1,500 essentially men at the border, the southern border with Honduras already. Of the caravan that came north, the Guatemalans were able to pull out 107 special interest aliens, people who weren't from Honduras or Guatemala or Salvador. They were from places like Bangladesh, down in the southern part of the border. They were from Cuba. So these are not your, this is not Central Americans per se. And of course, the president of Guatemala.
Well, the fear is, to be clear, the fear is that some of them are radical Islamist terrorists that have intermingled with this group of Central Americans. The further fear is that many of the, so many of these migrants from Central America, frankly, are radical left-wingers.
That's right.
Their leaders are left-wing party members, for crying out loud, out of Honduras. This is and no one other than the president at this point. I keep expecting to hear Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi express their concern for America, but with a caravan that seems to be doubling every few days in size, they have said nothing.
Well, I agree, and so this is why the president needs to act to protect the country. He should deploy troops to Guatemala to support the effort there, at least logistical troops, so the Guatemalans can deploy their folks to the southern border and turn away the caravans that are forming on the south.
Well, it's very disappointing, I'm sure, to the president that Guatemala did nothing to stop this caravan. Honduras did nothing. This is El Salvador. This is horrible behavior, and you've got people like Pelosi walking around chirping about, there's just not a problem here. If this group of people shows up at our border, they are automatically, if they are further coached in the rules, will have to be given asylum, for crying out loud, because, as the president says, our immigration laws, our refugee laws are just plain stupid.
Well, that's why he has to deploy the military to the southern border and prevent these people from entering. Because once they enter, they are free and clear, practically speaking. There isn't the capacity to keep them even detained. So they will be free to enter the United States, and they'll never be heard from again, at least by law enforcement. And this is a serious crisis in the sense that President Morales of Guatemala, he said just a few weeks ago, look, we arrested 100 foreign nationals tied to ISIS. Turns out many of them were tied to Syria. They were detained and removed. Who knows what else is going on in Guatemala as a result? And as I say, the president, the conservative government in Guatemala is under assault from the Soros operations, the United Nations, and the deep staters at the State Department. And this is what has been wrought. We've got a government unable to control its borders, and frankly, the president should offer assistance and go into Guatemala right now and stop them before they get into Mexico.
You make me nervous talking about sending our troops into Guatemala
to defend our interests.
I understand, but the fact of the matter is, the crisis that is at hand is the one that is shaping up directed toward our border, and it's not an accident. And it's not an accident. It is straightforward history, and it's not speculation. It is history. That
well,
intermingled with this group of people that is obviously operating with support, significant support and direction from what groups we do not know for sure at this point.
Well,
but we do know
that
intermingle will be a lot of very bad characters, including MS-13, other narco terrorists running through that crowd of people. And by the way, I suppose everybody has noticed these are mostly adult males in this caravan to this point, and I mean overwhelmingly so.
Well, your video is showing that. Chris tells me that's what's happening in the southern border. And the concern is that they're going to be overwhelmed again at the Honduran border. The caravans are building up again, and this is just the first wave. And frankly, there are hundreds, if not thousands, already hitting the border, but the media isn't covering it. And I don't, you know, the president,
well, we know
I think,
from the Homeland Security that a caravan, at the time that the estimate was 5,000 people in that caravan. The equivalent of a caravan is arriving every day on our borders.
That's right.
Illegal immigration has risen by at least a third. And by the way, those are numbers that are somewhat formulaic and often underestimate what actually is occurring at our border in terms of the crossings, illegal crossings. Tom Fenton, I very quickly, I want to just say thank you, and I'm glad you're down there, Chris Farrell and your folks, to give us firsthand knowledge of what's going on and to be working with those governments. Tom Fenton, thanks for being with us.
You're welcome, Lou. Thank you.